Hello, students. Simone Howard, and I'm reading to you the Twits by Roald Dahl. We're on to chapter called The Wormy Spaghetti. Now, just like we've been doing this whole time, I'm going to think about what the title of this chapter is, The Wormy Spaghetti. I don't know what a wormy spaghetti would be, but I hear the word worm in there, and I know what spaghetti is, and I know that the last chapter, Mr. Twit put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed, and I'm sure she's upset, or at least wondering what the skilly wiggler's doing. So we're going to look at the pictures and come up with something from that. See if there's any pictures on that page. Nope. Oh, there's one. It shows them together. They are at a dining room table, it looks like to me. I see a lamp in the background. I see them both talking. Well, maybe he's talking, I can't tell. But I see that she is smiling, which means she's pretty happy about something. And he looks like he's eating as disgustingly as he's eaten or was described in the Dirty Beers chapter. Ugh. So let's see if there's any other pages. That's just some work. Oh, there's one. There we go. Now, he's wiping his mouth, it looks like. But it doesn't look like a napkin from here. It looks like a tablecloth. It looks like he's wiping his mouth with the tablecloth, which is another foul, disgusting thing to do. He doesn't look happy, but honestly, his beard makes it hard to decipher when he's happy and when he's upset. Let's keep going. Oh, now, definitely, Mrs. Twit looks happy about something, and he looks... Oh, wait, no, can't go that way. You see my backyard instead of the picture. Maybe surprised? Still holding that tablecloth, and she looks like she's stomping her feet. Okay. So we've gone over the picture, and we know that there's going to be them eating together. And we know that he's going to look confused or baffled, maybe. And she looks happy, and she doesn't seem to be eating much. We know the chapter is called The Wormy Spaghetti, so I bet we can guess that they're eating spaghetti. Now, at the end of this together, we are going to perform a summarization using the somebody wanted, but so then method. And I'll show you after we get done reading it together what I mean by that. We'll fill this out together, and you'll see an easy way to do a summary of a fictional passage. Fictional story means it's made up. It's fake. Fictional, fake. It's a fake story. It's a story. It's from somebody's brain. It didn't really happen in real life. Or if it did, they've told a story about it so that it sounds like a story. Okay. Still fiction. So I'm going to read to you this fictional passage, The Wormy Spaghetti, from Roald Dahl's The Twits. The Wormy Spaghetti. The next day, to pay Mr. Twit back for the frog trick, Mrs. Twit sneaked out into the garden and dug up some worms. She chose big, long ones and put them in a tin and carried the tin back to the house under her apron. A tin. She's talking about a can. She put the worms, big long worms, into a can. And at 1 o'clock, she cooked spaghetti for lunch. She mixed the worms in with the spaghetti. But only on her husband's plate. The worms didn't show because everything was covered with tomato sauce and sprinkled with cheese. "Oi! My spaghetti's moving!" cried Mr. Twit, poking around in it with his fork. "It's a new kind," Mrs. Twit said, taking a mouthful of her own plate, which of course had no worms. "It's called squiggly spaghetti. It's delicious. Eat it up while it's nice and hot." Mr. Twit started eating, twisting the long tomato-covered strings around his fork and shoveling them into his mouth. Or, because he never opens his mouth wide. Anyways, soon the tomato sauce was all over his hairy chin. "It's not as good as the ordinary kind," he said, talking with his mouth full. "It's too squishy." "I find it very tasty," Mrs. Twit said. She was watching him from the other end of the table. It gave her great pleasure to watch him eating worms. "I find it rather bitter," Mr. Twit said. It's got a distinctly bitter flavor. Buy the other kind next time. Mrs. Twit waited until he had eaten the whole plateful, and then she said, You want to know why your spaghetti was squishy? Mr. Twit wiped the tomato sauce from his beard with a corner of the tablecloth. Why? He said. And why it had a nasty bitter taste? Why? He said. Because it was worms! Cried Mrs. Twit, clapping her hands and stamping her feet on the ground and rocking back and forth with horrible laughter. And that's why she's so happy, because she tricked her husband into eating spaghetti that was full of worms. This is a disgusting couple, but they're pretty entertaining to talk about. So now we're going to talk about trying to summarize this chapter. Now, the first thing you start off with in this kind of summary is somebody. Who is the somebodies in this chapter? We know that one somebody is Mr. Twit, and another somebody is Mrs. Twit. But we have to think to ourselves, which somebody wanted something? Well, Mr. Twit wanted spaghetti, but his wife gave him worms, so he sat there shocked. Do you see how that kind of leaves something? But if we talk about Mrs. Twit, the whole chapter goes on through Mrs. Twit, and there's nothing happening behind her back because it's her trick. And so under this somebody part, I'm going to write Mrs. Twit. Mrs. Twit. Mrs. Twit. What did she want? She wanted to get back at her husband. To get back at her husband, or to trick him. She wanted to get back at her husband to trick him. But what'd she have to do? But she had to be sneaky. She covered the worms with sauce and cheese. I put chest and I had to put an E on the end. So somebody, Mrs. Twit, wanted to get back at her husband to trick him. But she had to be sneaky. She covered the worms with sauce and cheese. So, what happened? Mr. Twit ate wormy spaghetti and did not like it. What happened last? Mrs. Twit told him he ate worms and she got back at Mr. Twit. So there, we've written a quick summary. This is the important information of what happened in that chapter. Somebody, Mrs. Twit, wanted to get back at her husband to trick him. But she had to be sneaky. She covered the worms with sauce and cheese. So Mr. Twit ate the wormy spaghetti and did not like it. Then Mrs. Twit told him he ate worms, and she got back at him. At Mr. Twit. It's an easy way to do a summary. The somebody wanted, but so then. We talked about a tin means a can, and a tablecloth is a piece of, it's like a sheet almost that you put over a table that protects the table from getting scratched up while people are eating, or protects the table from stains from like spaghetti. I think, oh, bitter. Bitter means when something tastes like not pleasant, but not in a gross way, but not in an overly gross way. It's not like something you would spit out. It's more like something you'd be like, ugh, that's bitter. Like a very strong coffee could be bitter, or unsweet tea is sometimes considered bitter. If you eat have you ever eaten a pecan and there's a piece of the seed? There's a piece of the shell still attached to the seed, and you get that in your mouth, that's a bitter taste. But I don't know if you guys have ever had that. If you think of something bitter, let me know in the comments. Okay. I'm going to have to stop here. We're already at 11 minutes. It's a long time. See you for the next chapter.